Cults and narcissists have a lot in common with the way they manipulate people, which means that if we can identify how they manipulate us, it's easier to protect ourselves against both at the same time. In the previous video, I mentioned 6 of these points that we should be aware of. Number 1, they lie to you. Number 2, they hijack reciprocity and guilt trip you into doing things for them. Number 3, they hijack shame and guilt, so you feel bad about what happened, but then you sort of double down. Number 4, they isolate you from friends and family to make you more vulnerable. Number 5, they create a fake self through programming, so it's harder to go back to the friends and family and you lose grip over what the world really is like. And number 6, they create a fear of the outside, so you won't go looking for help and you will be afraid to leave. So what can you do about this? Let's start with number 1. They lie to you. First of all, remember, you will pick up on certain lies when you're dealing with a cult or with a narcissist. You will find out things about the organization that you didn't know, that they didn't say. It will turn out the different names for the same organization, and they will have lied to you about this. If this is the case, remember to think to yourself, if they lied about this, they're lying about something else. That's pretty much a certainty. And then, why are they afraid of talking about this? What is it that makes them think that the right thing to do is to lie and be deceptive? Remember, with any statement they made, add the word allegedly. Or so they say, because you can't know if it's true or not. This is very powerful for deprogramming yourself. Take every single statement they made and just say, we don't know about that, I don't know about that, I can't be sure, because I know I'm dealing with a liar. I know I'm dealing with an organization that promotes lying, and therefore I can't trust them. This is a very important step. This also means question everything else they say. If they tell you facts about the world and statistics and politics and spirituality, just remember, I'm dealing with a liar who has their own interest. In order to get me to do something, I've got no idea if it's true or not. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not saying it is true. I'm saying I can't trust this person anymore. So I might have to check everything, but until I do, I suspend my judgment. And I don't just believe them because they've proven that they are untrustworthy. And then you can ask yourself, do you really want to surround yourself with untrustworthy people? The world is complicated enough as it is to not surround yourself with people who lie to you, because when people lie to you, you can't navigate the world. It's like giving you a map of Paris when you're in London. You know that you will get lost eventually. And that, with toxic people and with cults, is exactly the goal. Number 2, they hijack reciprocity. And they use pressure. So what you can do is simply say no. They want to invite you for dinner, just say no thank you and observe the reaction. Do they shrug it off? Do they go, okay? Or do they put pressure? Do they try to guilt trip you? Do they complain? Do they start asking you to justify why not? Do they try to make you defensive? And observe how you feel. You can come up with any kind of excuse. That doesn't matter. Just remember, observe how they are reacting. And something's very important here, whether it's with this point or the previous one. If you're dealing with a liar, you don't need to argue with them. If you're dealing with someone who is dishonest and you explain to them how you feel, you can be pretty sure they're going to be using this to lie to you again and manipulate you again. You don't have to argue with them. You don't have to tell them the truth. You can just excuse yourself and get out. The same, if they're trying to hijack reciprocity, just excuse yourself. They want you to come for dinner or to some kind of event or some kind of conference. Say, I'm sorry, I can't make it that day. If they ask why not, you can just ask them, does that really matter? What would it change? And then you can just excuse yourself from the conversation and say, I'm sorry, I have to leave now. It was lovely meeting you. Get out. Point number 3, when they hijack the shame and the guilt, remember, when someone is lying to you, they are cheating. It's like playing a game where someone is cheating. Imagine you believe that you are playing ping pong and you go with a ping pong paddle, and opposite you is somebody with a baseball bat throwing a baseball at your face systematically. You can keep holding onto the ping pong paddle and wonder why that ping pong ball is hurting you so much and why that person is hitting you on the head with a baseball bat, or you can get out of there. Remember, observe how people act. Observe what they do, and don't pay too much attention to what they say unless you observe a mismatch. If there's a mismatch, observe specifically how they act, what they do, and how they make you feel. And when it comes to the people around you, you might be ashamed and embarrassed to say that you fell for a cult or you fell for a narcissist, which is understandably embarrassing because, we're supposed to be smarter than that. Now, one point is, smart people typically are more vulnerable to cults and narcissists. One reason or hypothesis for that is smart people, high IQ people, and high emotional intelligence people are typically quite good at joining the dots, reading between the lines, imagining what is missing in the story, whereas people with lower IQ or lower emotional intelligence will just think, that doesn't make sense to me, and shrug it off. So, if this is the case that you've fallen for these people, just tell the people around you, this might be a bit embarrassing, but I didn't feel comfortable saying no. And I realize I've got something to work on. The fact that some of us don't feel comfortable saying no is obvious. It obviously happens. It obviously can happen to anyone. And everyone can understand that we can fall for mind control and manipulation, especially from people and organizations who practice this all the time. It really is their bread and butter. So just remember, if you fall for a scam, it's not because you were stupid, it's because the scammer had time to prepare, find your vulnerabilities and exploit your vulnerabilities. Basically, you didn't stand a chance. Now, point number 4, being isolated from their friends and family. It can be difficult to go back to them and admit what happened. It can be difficult to know how to reach out to them and ask just for some time together, especially if you've been maybe a little bit obnoxious with them, or not very kind, or you made unpleasant comments, or you've been looking for conflict when you were being brainwashed. So you can try doing this. Just write to them and say something like, I really miss you. It's been a long time we didn't have time together. Would it be okay for us to have a coffee and hang out? Just try to open the door and see how things are. Most of the time, with friends and family, they will be relieved that you reach out because they too will be missing you. And what most people want is simply for things to be normal and okay, and people to be happy, and you to be happy, and you to be thriving. So when you reach out to friends and family and you just say, I miss you and I'd like to hang out, would it be okay to spend some time? Most of the time, they're likely to say yes. And then you can just run through and say something along the lines of, this has been a really weird time. Remember that organization I went to? I went to a conference and it seemed great. And then I spent more time with them, but I started noticing some dodgy things. And then I didn't feel comfortable and I realized I was pretty obnoxious with you. I'm sorry about that. I'm not really sure what happened, but I miss our friendship. I apologize. Remember to be willing to apologize to the people that we've hurt. It happens, but if you don't owe up to it, then it's going to be harder to reach out. Point number 5 about the fake self, be it with a cult or with a narcissist. Just observe the following. You will have a certain vision of the world that comes from the cult or the narcissist. Observe how it feels when you explain it and when you're faced with someone who disagrees. Are you okay with simply disagreeing, or do you become angry? Do you become emotional? Do you suffer from cognitive dissonance and believe, if you disagree with me, that makes you a bad person? If you disagree with me, we can't be friends. If that is the case, likely you have been brainwashed. Are you capable of disagreeing without getting angry? You might be really curious. How come you disagree? I know you're a great person, and yet you see something here that I don't really see. Let's talk about it until we get to some point that is quite clear. And remember, with most moral questions, there is some level of complexity here. So people can come to a different conclusion simply because they overweight or underweight something else. Most of the time, we should be able to say, I can see how you got to a different conclusion. I can see how your logic is a bit different, but there are various points where, we agree on, we simply weight things a bit differently. And something you can do if you're using slogans is try to replace the words. If you replace the words and it sounds stupid and illogical, it probably is brainwashing. Most of the time, if it's a short sentence, that is a sign that it's brainwashing. In politics, typically, people will be having slogans to support whichever candidate. We sort of know what's happening. Something like Bob for president is not that much of a brainwashing slogan. It's a statement, whatever. And with any of these slogans, ask yourself, who is this destined to? I remember political organizations I knew who were doing a lot of demonstrations with a lot of slogans and pamphlets. And at one point I asked the organizers, what is the point? We have never convinced a single person that we met to change their mind. I don't see how this makes sense. We can have debates with them, that might work. We can confront ideas, it might work. But chanting various random sentences at people who disagree with us, no one has changed their mind. What is the point? And they said to me, the goal isn't to change their mind. The goal is to make sure that the people who are demonstrating agree with us even more and they stop thinking. As long as people are demonstrating and doing chants, they have to believe that they believe in it, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. This is part of the brainwashing process. So if you find yourself in any kind of group doing any kind of chant, just remember, this probably is brainwashing, and see how you feel if you don't chant along. Do people look at you in a strange way? Do they just shrug their shoulders? In most healthy religions, if you go to some kind of service and you don't speak along, people are just okay, they're happy to have you there with you. But if they look at you in a strange way and try to nudge you to chant along or sing along or say the same things, they're trying to pressure you. If they're not okay with you not being part of the group, that really is a bad sign. Which leads us to the next point, the one where they create a fear of the outside so that you don't leave. In a healthy organization, they will basically be saying, we're happy if you stay, but if you want to leave, it's fine. In a healthy relationship, it's the same thing. If you stay, it's great. If it really isn't working out for you and we can't do anything, then it's okay if you leave. But if they're trying to make you afraid of leaving, or if they're trying to threaten you if you leave, or something along those lines, that is a pretty bad sign. And of course, it's easy to get guilt-tripped into staying. So my suggestion in those cases is to say something along the lines of, I'm sorry. I need a bit of time alone. I need a bit of me time. Would that be okay? And if they reply, no, it wouldn't, then you can ask them, how come? But especially if you say you need a bit of alone time, time on your own, and they're not okay with that, and they're pressuring you into staying, you probably need to get out pretty fast. Because regardless of if they have good or bad intentions, that clearly is not a healthy environment. Remember, if you put yourself in any situation, be it with an individual or with a group that is toxic and unhealthy for you in one shape or form, be it physically, mentally, socially, spiritually, economically, and so on and so forth, you are polluting your life. There are enough people and organizations who want you to thrive and are willing to support you. If you pollute your life and you get isolated, that's going to be hurting the people around you. If you find yourself with an organization that is encouraging you to pollute your life and become isolated, observe how they monetize this, maybe through money or through attention. Remember that narcissists are sort of attention junkies. They just want your attention and they want to extract it from you and probably the rest of your resources. With cults, it's roughly the same thing. They want the free labor, they want your money, they want your time. The people at the head typically are narcissists or psychopaths. So they create massive organizations that basically are run like narcissistic relationships. When you observe these traits, regardless of wherever they are, remember to consider, is this working out for you? Is this really what you signed up for? If you knew at the start what you know now, would you really be hanging out with these people? I'll end with an anecdote. A friend of mine who was part of this political organization and was dating one of the leaders of the organization. And I said to her, if you changed your mind about the way you see the world and what makes sense and doesn't make sense, I might disagree with you. You'd still be my friend. I'd be curious as to what led to the disagreement, but we don't have to agree on everything for me to appreciate you. But if you changed your mind on any of these topics, those other people there, your friends, would they still talk to you? And she thought and replied, no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't talk to me. They would badmouth me. They would cut me off socially. I've lost contact with my family, with my former friends. We work together so I'd lose my job. And then she said, oh my goodness, I think I see what's happening. And the next day, she resigned from that organization. She resigned from her job. She planned to return back to her friends and family, and she cut off contact with all of those people. And the last thing I heard is that she's absolutely thriving and significantly happier after having lost 10 years of her life to that organization. Remember, if you're caught in any of these situations with a narcissist or with a cult, you've already lost a certain number of years. It's up to you to decide how many more you want to continue to lose before you get your life back on track. Remember also, if you leave a relationship with a narcissist, it's not unlike leaving a relationship with a cult. You would expect it take a bit of time to get your life back on track and heal. But the main thing is, after you leave a relationship with a cult, it's obvious that the point is to get your life back on track and heal and go back to a normal mode of functioning. It can be a trick when we leave a relationship with a narcissist to become obsessed with narcissism. One important point is to understand how they function, to understand what went wrong in the past, and avoid it happening again. But the key point is to remember to get your life back on track and heal so you can move forward. The price you've paid is incredibly high. That might be enough.